Resident Evil 2. This is, of course, the sequel to the first Resident Evil game, and actually the one that I have the most sentimental value towards. After falling in love with the first game, this is the first one that I ended up picking up, buying, and owning for myself. So it's one that I always look back on very fondly, but I haven't actually played this game in about 10 years or so, give or take. People usually ask me what's my favorite Resident Evil, and I always default to Resident Evil 2. It was bigger, better, had so much more content compared to the first game, and it was the only experience I really had with the series at the time. But is it really all that great? Does it really hold up as well today, especially compared to the original or other entries in the series? Let's find out.
Resident Evil 2.
Resident Evil 2 was released in 1998 and further expands the survival horror genre. The core features and gameplay are the same as for the first entry. Fixed camera angles, limited inventory, tank controls, lots of puzzles, and of course, campy voice acting.
Who are you? Oh, you must be the new guy. Leon. Sorry, but it looks like your party has been cancelled.
Graphically, this game's better than the original. I love the early 3D graphic art style here, which blends pre-rendered backgrounds with the pixel-based characters. There's no fun live-action scenes here, but there are CG cutscenes that help immerse yourself in Raccoon City. This game absolutely flexes its increased budget from the original. Every so often you will get either a CG scene that shows something happening, or an in-engine scene that sets the mood. This game is absolutely more cinematic than the first, something the developers intended for this game. Resident Evil 2 is set a few months after the events of Resident Evil 1, where zombies have spread into Raccoon City. This time, players choose from playing as either Leon Kennedy, a rookie police officer arriving in the town for his first day, and Claire Redfield, the headstrong sister of Chris Redfield, one of the protagonists from the first game. My favorite to start in this game is Leon. I've always liked Leon, especially after his appearances in later titles, and it's totally not because my girl Jill isn't in this game or anything. Don't be ridiculous. Leon and Claire meet up as the city starts to fall apart from zombies, and unfortunately they get separated. You work your way to the police station and start your adventure. I've always loved this CG intro because you get to see how the characters respond to the danger, and their dialogue always cracks me up.
You're a cop, right?
Yeah, first day on the job. Great, huh? Name's Leon Kennedy. Nice to meet you.
Mine's Claire. Claire Redfield. I came to find my brother, Chris.
The first thing you'll notice in this game is that it throws you straight into the action. Resident Evil 2 is absolutely more combat-focused compared to the original. You start right in the heart of the city, with burning buildings and lots of zombies after you. I even died on the first screen just trying to figure out where to go. Combat in this game has changed slightly. Zombies can fall down more likely when shot in the chest, making a potential strategy to basically stun and run past them to conserve your ammo. You still have a good variety of enemies here too. It's mostly zombies with dogs and other plant-based creatures later on. Sadly, the hunters from the first game are not present here, but we do get my favorite Resident Evil enemy instead, the Licker. These slippery guys crawl around and can lash at you with their tongue. They are few and far between, but can be brutal, and their sudden movements keep you on your toes. While the first game focused a lot on the mansion and surrounding areas, Resident Evil 2 follows a similar approach with the police station, and then the underground labs and sewers. The police station even has the STARS office, so you can see where the characters from the first game worked. The subtle lines about each character's desk is great, and I love this giant picture of the STARS team. How many of them can you name? Leon and Claire find Chris's journal, where he notes about leaving the city to further hunt down Umbrella at their headquarters in Europe. So our heroes from the first game sadly don't make an appearance here. You can also see that Jill has a picture of me on her desk. This game has more scenarios where there are numerous zombies in one area. As the first game felt more mysterious as you tried to piece together what was going on in the mansion, Resident Evil 2's objective is focused more on just trying to look for survivors and escaping the city. I feel it adds more of an importance of combat and diving further into the zombie-ish subgenre over maintaining a tense vibe like the first game. This gameplay progression feels natural as a sequel, just a different feel. That is to say, the game still has a suspenseful atmosphere and shares a lot from its predecessor. Movement and puzzle solving are ever present, and the weapons feel good too. Not to mention the herb system is back again. I've already said my piece on that, but never talked about the other healing item here, the first aid spray. What even is that?
Ugh, I was just mauled by a zombie. Let me just heal myself.
There are also some smaller features that, while optional, are still interesting. For example, you can find film in the game that you can develop in the Dark Room to learn more of Umbrella's secrets. You still find texts that further explain what's going on in Raccoon City proper following the events of the first game. You slowly learn that the Chief of Police is working with Umbrella to keep their operations a secret, and a new virus has been created by William Birkin. Depending on who you choose, you get a helper character that will interact with you, and you can even control them in some areas of the game. A big step up from the previous entry. Leon meets up with Ada Wong, a mysterious woman who is looking for her boyfriend, while Claire finds Sherry Birkin, William's daughter, who is trying to escape the city. Throughout the story, you learn that William injected himself with the G-Virus to prevent his life's work from being taken by Umbrella. However, this is what causes the virus to spread to the city. You have to play as both Leon and Claire to get the full story of what goes on, as there is a lot that happens behind the scenes that will become relevant later on in the series. The events at Raccoon City become a large focal point of the series canon, and we do get to see more of it in the next game as well. Towards the end, you learn that Ada is actually a spy sent to obtain a sample of the G-Virus. She succeeds, but after a touching moment with Leon, falls to her apparent death.
Long live the king.
Leon and Claire defeat a heavily mutated William Birkin and escape by train, while Leon claims that this is just the beginning, and Claire vows to find her brother. Sherry makes it too, and we will see her and Ada in future installments of the series.
One thing we haven't mentioned yet is that this game is actually a 2-disc game. So the way it works is based on who you pick at the beginning of the game, that will influence who you can play in the second half of the game. So since I'm choosing Leon, that means my second half will be playing from Claire's perspective. So this sounds just like how in Resident Evil 1 you choose one character or the other, and that's fine. However, when you beat the first game and put the second disc in for the second campaign, if you load your memory card save from the first one, all your actions that you did will directly influence what happens in the second campaign. So these are things like leaving items behind for your friend, or certain enemies you clear out or destroy in the first campaign won't show up in the second one. There's a bunch of positive and negative effects that you get to choose in your first campaign that will influence the second one, and I think that's just awesome. They really thought of a way to kind of merge the two different campaigns together instead of it just feeling like you're playing the same game twice. That is to say, this feature is very primitive in a way because it only has about, I want to say like 8 or so different scenarios or choices that you get, and they're not really super clear when you're playing them, which I guess is also another cool feature. I just think for like a 1998 game, this is like a really, really cool feature to try to add more replayability and connectivity with the two campaigns. Your choices do matter in a game from 1998. That's just insane.
Development of Resident Evil 2 featured newer Capcom employees with a mixture of some of the original staff. Shinji Mikami, director of Resident Evil 1, took on a producing role and often had creative differences with Resident Evil 2 director Hideki Kamiya. You might be more familiar with Mikami and Kamiya's work after Resident Evil when they worked on games with Clover Studio and helped form Platinum Games. The staff changes led to an earlier build being scrapped very late into development. Some development images and notes exist today, which people commonly refer to as Resident Evil 1.5. Also, as a fun note, both the voice actors for Leon and Claire previously worked together on the original X-Men animated series, as did Jill's voice actress in Resident Evil 3. Just a neat fun fact. One of my favorite quick parts in this game is the crocodile sequence. It's such a short part that's featured in the back of the box even, but it's just really hilarious to me. One of the most well-known aspects of the second campaign is the tyrant monster that hunts you down, Mr. X, a reoccurring boss that is always a looming danger. Capcom would expand upon this idea much more in Resident Evil 3, but here it adds another danger into the mix that has become an iconic aspect of the game. Since the locations are already familiar to the player from doing the first campaign, adding more uneasiness here with Mr. X is a great way to keep the game fresh on the second campaign. When Resident Evil 2 was being released, the series was already very popular. In the cover itself of the game, there were ads for the upcoming movie, as well as ads for comics and action figures in the manual. This was becoming a large franchise. Like the first game, this one would get a DualShock version, which would become the basis for the other ports that would come out on Dreamcast and GameCube, to name a few. This is also the only Resident Evil game to be on the Nintendo 64, an impressive feat to fit this game onto a single cartridge. This version is the only one to have a randomizer mode, making it the earliest official game randomizer made. While already having the incentive to play both campaigns, there's also 2 challenging minigames and costumes to unlock. During this era, adding content to keep players playing your game was important, and Resident Evil 2 delivers a lot. Newer fans may be more familiar with the Resident Evil 2 remake, which I have, and it is also very good. Resident Evil 2 is a true definition of a sequel. This game is bigger, has much more replayability, has great combat and atmosphere, and expands the Resident Evil brand further to appeal to more players. Its story and new characters have become just as iconic and memorable as the first game, not even to mention its smaller quirks that carry over from the previous title, like the health system, how your character responds to taking damage, how items sparkle to grab your attention, and even new enemies spawning in previously cleared areas. This game still maintains a lot of that polish and charm from the first entry and just goes well beyond here. To me, it is the pinnacle for classic-styled Resident Evil.
So that is Resident Evil 2. Does this game hold up? I absolutely think so. It's very fun, has a lot of content, the way the characters interact with each other with the different campaigns adds a whole nother level of depth, and really this game is a true sequel to the original Resident Evil. Do I think this is my favorite Resident Evil? I still don't know. I think the first game has a lot of charm and simplicity that I really appreciate today, but this game truly improves everything upon the first game into the second one. To me, it's a little bit less scary, more action-y, kind of maybe a foreshadow to where the series would go in the future. But, you know, this game is good. Maybe the best classic Resident Evil style game, but not necessarily my favorite. Still worth a try. But thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you should check out my video on the first Resident Evil that I made a while back. And you know, maybe we'll get to some of these other guys in the future. Take care.